I fall down when you're mine, I get up and you're a stranger. Out of sight, out of mind, no wanting to surrender.
How's it going? So we're going to talk about surfboard today, and we're going to talk about the Seaside, shaped by Rob Machado, delivered through Firewire Tech. And I'm going to break it down for its pros and cons. I've seen a few reviews on this board and they're very, very similar, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I'm not going to talk too much about the shape and the contours and all sorts of stuff. I mean, go pick one up, feel it, touch it, and you'll feel that. I mean, I'll discuss it a little bit just in case you can't get your hands on one straight away. But I'll just talk about what it's like to ride this in different kinds of waves, and basically just how it feels, how it responds, and if it's worth putting in your quiver. Because it is a very unusual board. It's a very unique board. So let's just sit down for a second with it. Take our time. Get yourself a coffee or a beer or whatever you want. And let's get cracking. Let's get into it. So this is the 5.9. I went with a slightly bigger model. I may have actually overshot a little bit. I think it's a little bit too much volume for me in a 5.9. I was more worried about the rail line. I wanted to have a bit of a longer rail line. I have a 5.5 in there, baked potato, and I wanted to get something that still had a lot of volume, still paddled well, but had a longer rail line. And with the thinned out tail and the thinned out nose, I figured it may still work well even with all the extra volume. And you know what? It actually does. I'm just thinking I could have gone down to say a 5.6 or a 5.7. But the 5.9 still works really, really well in most situations, but not in all. So, what do I like about the board? Look, it's a paddle beast. You've heard people talk about that. It just the volume's all here. It's all up here. It's all under your chest. So, when you're paddling, it just glides into waves. Ridiculous. It took me a few waves just to get used to sort of timing myself with the wave and how well it paddled, because I'm used to riding a smaller board or a board with a lot less volume. So you really kind of dig in and try to get going. And if you did that with this, you kind of almost got in front of the wave. So yeah, it takes a little get used to with the paddling, because it just paddles so incredibly well. Once you're up on your feet though, that's when things get really interesting, because this board just generates speed like nothing I've ever ridden before. As soon as you put your feet in the wax, it goes. And it really goes. It just projects itself so quickly down the line. It's got so much planing surface. And I think with that, that really interesting sort of, what they call it, what's he call it, board eats board or something like that, just that double concave through here that comes all the way up to about here. I mean, you can still feel a little bit just about here. You've got all that double concave right through there, and then these little grippy bits in the edge here, and everything just sort of filters the water out down the back there, and it turns it into like a jet craft. It's so quick, and that is great in most situations, because we love speed. Speed's our friend. It falls down a little bit when you're in sort of more choppy or bumpy surf, a little bit bumpier conditions. I was surfing yesterday at a reef break that was, it was a bit winded. A little bit side shore. It just had kind of a texture, a bit of a chop through the face, and you're riding into the wind a little bit when you're going along on the rights. And when I went to lay it into a turn, it had so much speed, but the chop and everything just disconnected the board, and before I knew it, I was just skipping out. And then after that, once I started getting used to it a little bit, you really kind of have to kind of stick with it and like be gingerly and just sort of try to not over push your turns, and try to engage a little bit more, get your foot back more on those fins, and just sort of, use the board a little differently. When you're in glassy conditions, it's the complete opposite. There's something about the bottom contours of this board that when you're in glassy conditions and you've got a nice wall, it's like the board, it's almost like it's a suction cup. It just like holds into the face. It grips that face so well that you almost feel underpowered trying to turn it because it's so connected to the wave that you could put everything you've got into it, and it will just hold its line, hold its rail right through there. And then when it does release, which feels like it really releases at the end of the turn. I mean, this could all just be my style of surfing as well, but when it does release, it releases so well. But then you re-engage it so easy as well. It's the fins, the board, the shape, I don't know what it is, but this thing is so incredibly easy to surf, and also at the same time will just kick your ass from out of nowhere. It's just a funky board to ride. When everything goes right and you nail it, it is probably the most fun I've had on a surfboard. And then when it's not going right, it's one of the least fun surfs I've had. But mostly, and I say it's about 95% of the surfs I've had on this board over the last month, which has been almost daily, it's been very lucky. 95% I'd say of those surfs have been just amazing. Just the board just felt absolutely incredible, so engaged, so fun, so drivey, so loose. It's so weird to say that, like it's a drivey board, yet it can be as loose as you want it to be, just by slightly stepping back a little bit, getting your foot into this thinned out tail, and the board will just release under pressure, but then generate speed again. I was making sections I'd never used to make, and I attribute that a lot to the board. It suits my riding style. It may not suit everybody's though. Who's this board good for? Jeez, I mean, anyone could ride it. It's got, you're going to want to adjust your volume metrics to suit whatever style you are. If you're a light-footed surfer or a lighter guy, or more of a high-level surfer, you're not going to want to go with something like a 5.9. It's got way too much volume. I mean, look, Rob rides it in a 5.2, so you're going to want to drop way down to 5.2 to 5.4 or something like that. But if you're getting a bit older or a little bit heavier like myself, then yeah, going up a little bit in literage is easy to do without having to go with like a long board. You don't have to go to a mid-length to get out there and get good waves, and you're not compromising the way you would with a fish. When you get a fish, the outline usually comes so straight through here to this wider tail, and that gives you amazing planing over flat points and all that sort of stuff. But it also it takes away the maneuverability. You tend to find the board will dig in and bite a little harder when you go to lay into turns. Whereas this really gives you that sense of release. That tail and this fin combination really release. So you can feel the board slide out kind of uncontrolled. It's like drifting in a really good FR car. You can when you feel that release, but you can just pull it right back in and rein it in. It's not out of control. Whereas I find with a fish in general, once you push it to the point of where you release the tail, where you release the fins, you're pretty much out of control there. It's pretty hard to reel it back in. It does have a lot of volume, so duck diving and things like that, it's a lot of extra work, especially because all the volume's here, so you're really trying to force all that volume down. So if you're surfing a lot of beach breaks and stuff like that, where you've got to sit there and duck dive a whole bunch, it's a good workout. It definitely is a good workout. Now you may have noticed I haven't put a deck pad on here. They do release the Go pad or something like that. It's designed for this. I mean, other tail pads all work. The reason I haven't gone with a tail pad is because I wanted to feel how the board rode without that extra little bit of weight, or changing the balance there. And I thought I'd just give it a few surfs without one and try it, and I just love it. So I love being able to just like slide my foot back here and not feel that tail pad there. So I'll probably keep it in this setup. For fins, I went with the Futures, and I got Machado's funky hippie style fins, and they're great. Yeah, they're really good. They're fast. I actually tried these fins in my baked potato. I have a 5.5 baked potato, and I put these fins in that, and they went really well in that board as well. I didn't get the sensation of speed like I do with this board, but I'll tell you what, those fins did feel quicker, and I mean, it could just be because they're new and you love new things, but it felt quicker. I don't know, it felt good, and it felt kind of really like they had a lot of release but a lot of drive. So the fins were great. What else to talk about? Okay, yeah, look, another thing, this board is Helium Tech that they released this stuff in. You can research what that is, but it's there, it says 2HE, helium. It's light, it's so light. It's ridiculously light, and it's to the point where you wouldn't want it to be any lighter. Okay, it's super light. This board is insanely light, which is great for travel because, you know, you cut down a little bit of weight. It's not so good when it's got a bit of chatter on the face because you will feel it a little bit more. You have to engage your physical weight and pressure over the board a little bit more when it's got some chatter on the face. When it's glassy, it doesn't make a difference at all. But yeah, it's a very light board, and so far very durable. So, all right, what kind of conditions have I taken that in? So probably take that into account. So I just took this on a surf trip. I was living in a van for a couple of weeks up in Kyushu, and Kyushu is the southern island of Japan, and we had 2 back-to-back typhoon swells. So I lucked out. It was a work trip that I had to be up there for, and I just turned it into a surf trip as well. And so we had a super typhoon that came through, Typhoon 10 over here. I think they call it Haishen or something like that. And there was a typhoon before that, which is just kind of, you know, regular old everyday typhoon. And I got a chance to try this board out in a whole bunch of different kinds of waves. So I surfed it first in, it was just a beach break, kind of mellow beach break, maybe chest high, kind of rolly waves, probably more suited to like a mid-length or a longboard. And it went really well on that. And I've got some footage. I'll have that playing at some point in the video, or just be next to me here or something. Just GoPro in the mouth stuff. But it was just, you know, it was super like cruisy, and you could just sit there and just pump down the line and just make those sections, throw turns where you wanted it to without, you know, losing too much speed. And you know, those waves, I mean, GoPro always makes it look smaller, especially when it's in your mouth, but yeah, they were probably like sort of chest, shoulder high, and just like really glasses, the odd head high set that came through. And it was really, really fun. Even with a bit of a crowd out, I was able to get a few waves and to not waste them, ride them all the way to the end. So for that, it was great. And that's kind of what Rob sort of designed it for, right? It's for the seaside, so it's a beach breaky kind of wave. Then I took it out on another day. It was probably about head and a half and closing in on, there's a few double overhead sets, but mostly it's about head and a half. Super glassy, right hand point break over cobblestones. And that's where it shined. I mean, it was just having that face to work with, to be able to do a couple of carves, a couple of turns. It would make those steeper drops with no real stress. You could paddle and get in there nice and early. You can make the drops, that extra volume and the extra width I was worried about for some of those more critical waves, but it really handled it well. Once you engage those fins and that, especially that tail, it just hooked in and held its line, and then you were on it, you know. And like I said earlier, you know, it's like a suction cup on those glassy waves. You can just take it up and just carve it around. Almost like I said earlier, I've got a little bit too much volume, so like burying the rail was difficult. So it wasn't like, this isn't really a kind of board you're just going to hack and slash too much with. It's somewhere in between that short performance sort of, you know, typical thruster style board and like an old school fish, or, you know, like a bit of a retro board. It's just got that mid ground where you are going to do some pretty hard turns and you can throw the tail loose, but you're not really going full critical with it all the time. Or at least I'm not. I've seen video of Rob getting pretty critical. So yeah, I had it in that. And then I was lucky enough to take it out for a very quick session at Curran's Point in, I don't know if you know Curran's, famous for Tom Curran, went there in Miyazaki, and the typhoon swell was starting to hit. I was watching it for a couple of, maybe like 30-40 minutes, just watching it, getting a few clips on my camera, and it wasn't really hitting yet. The swell was forecast to hit, but it hadn't really hit. There was some solid like double over waves coming through, and they were peeling down and a little bit of chop in them, but nothing perfect. So I thought I'm going to paddle out. You know, I've always wanted to try surfing that spot, so I paddled out, got out there, and surely enough, you entered the lineup, and that's when it started hitting. Now, I'm not a big wave surfer. I don't like things getting much over double. Head and a half to double is about where I like to live, and it started getting pretty real pretty quick. should have probably picked up on the fact that most of the guys out there were riding on like 9, 6, 10-foot guns. But after duck diving a couple of massive ones and crapping myself a little bit, a medium size came through. It was a little bit, probably like close to double, maybe a little bit over double. I don't know. I was too busy just trying to ride it and make it out. Got on that and tore down the line, and that's where the speed of the board really kicked in, because it projected me down the line at this point break so quick around all the sections I had to make. It wasn't perfect, it was sectioning. Made it to the end, kicked out, got out of the water, took a deep breath, patted myself on the back, you did it, you rode it, and then and vowed probably never to go out there again. It's not my kind of wave. But the reason I mention that is to say that while it's definitely not the board to take out there, it handled it. It did all right. It got me through it. It got me a really nice ride. I wish I'd had the GoPro in my mouth for that one, but I just figured it was kind of choppy. I was just going to do something for me. And yeah, it held together really well. So I definitely wouldn't recommend it for those kind of waves, but had I been on, say, one of my other boards in this kind of range or an older fish, I don't think I would have done quite as well. I think that the board really helped me with that. So that's a little testimonial to this board. What else to talk about? Nothing really. There's nothing much to talk about with it. I mean, it's a surfboard, The rails are kind of full, but they're not so full. Tail feels nice. Construction's good. It's a nice board. Should you buy it? Yeah, why not? I mean, it's a fantastic board. I've talked to other people who have picked them up as well, and everyone's sort of ranting and raving about how it's the funnest board they've ever had. And that's the way to think about it with this board. It is one of the funnest boards out there. So if your surfing is more about just getting out and having a good time and having fun with your surfing, going out and playing with some walls and doing some carves and just having speed on tap, then yeah, this is a great board to buy. It's a great board to put in your quiver. If you're looking to get barreled off your nut every day and you want to charge big waves and crack the lip as critical as possible, then yeah, this is probably not the board for you. There's other ones for that. But as far as like an everyday or a good board to have in your quiver, for me, I would say that the Seaside's best point is that you could probably take this on just about any surf trip you're going to take, and it's going to be good. It's going to get you some amazing waves. You can't say that about every board. Like if you take your 5.9 or your 5.10 high performance shortboard out with you, then all those mushy days where the waves are a little bit soft or a little bit fat are just going to be boring as hell, whereas this board will make them fun. And yet it'll still handle when you've got those 4 to 6 foot waves start coming through and it's got a bit of a wall and it's got a bit of speed and it's a bit critical. You're still going to have a wicked surf on this. So highly recommend it as like a sort of an all-rounder for people who are looking for something that's a little bit in the middle, like an all-rounder, something that's a bit of fun, and that'll get you into a shitload of waves. So that's my review. It's long-winded, it's ranty. I didn't think about it before I did it. I just sort of came out here and talked about the board. So, detract as much as you want from that. But if you did like it, do the subscribe thing and the like thing and the comment thing, because that gives me money, and we all like that. Otherwise, go out and get some waves. If you can, if you're in an area that does it, Firewire do a lot of test days with it. You can go and try out some of the boards, so that you might be able to get your hands on one of these and go for a couple of quick waves. And I recommend giving it a shot if you do. That's the review.